Hey everybody, thanks for coming back and making it back down here. We're gonna, in a couple of seconds, Kurt's gonna get started with a presentation from Breakout Group 1. Just as a reminder, kind of how, I think everybody has an agenda. If you don't, they're on the back. I can get you one. But we'll go Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4. We'll have a break in there, and then we also have a lunch break in there somewhere too. So for each group, we'll have a presentation. The schedule has that presentation down for 30 minutes and then 30-minute discussion. That's just an hour for both. So the presentations, I doubt we're going to have any presentations that go longer than 30 minutes, but you know, some of y'all may be overachievers. We'll see. But then after that, we'll have discussion. So the discussion time is the time for the broader group to kind of give input and ask questions back about what the smaller groups discuss. So if you see something that in a group that you were not involved in, that you think is something that's crucial that we need to capture, this is the time in our discussion to make sure that gets brought out. And if discussion time is really quiet, we may start calling on people that were not in groups just to start some discussion, okay? And like before, the microphones are not for in the room, they're for the live stream. So if you have a discussion, or a point that you want to make, or you want to make a comment, raise your hand, and Natalia will be bringing around the microphone, okay?
A little bit.
All right, good deal.
I'll
Thanks,
just mention
everybody.
it. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So we were charged with the business plan for this first, and one thing, to keep in mind is, we had 5 different breakout groups, each of which was working on something that's important to the business plan. So the other 4 groups, just keep in mind that we tried to stay within our lane the best that we could, but with the understanding that we need all the information that you had put together as well in order to effectively design a business plan. And I think you'll see that theme a little bit as we go through. So the synthetic biology definitions, I think everybody was grappling with this in each of the breakout groups. And we have the definitions that Don had helped us with here. And we looked at additional sources as well. The National Academy's definition, if we boiled that down to the most fundamental terms in it, it's essentially just re-engineering life. So really, the definition seems to be evolving through time. From a functional perspective, there's the American Chemical Society Synthetic Biology Journal. I think there are some good, definitions, at least for the sections of the journal there, that can help provide some functional definitions of what various pieces of synthetic biology are. So I think that's helpful also to kind of supplement what's already there. And as well, it's broadly understood that that synthetic biology, the definition is evolving through time as new innovations are made in biotechnology. Synthetic biology is a moving target in essence. So I guess one of the things that we were also thinking about is synthetic biology, what is it not? And really for the purposes, this is kind of a selfish background, but we're thinking about business, and from the business perspective, ultimately we just need to understand what synthetic biology is not. What does that mean to ERDC? In general, all business is good business. If it's on the fringe between biotechnology and synthetic biology, does it really matter? I think probably matters most when going through and trying to, work with large stakeholders like the DoD, where they have a synthetic biology focus. I think we need to try to understand what the DoD's definition of what synthetic biology is if we're trying to go through and develop programs within that system. So. But ultimately, we need to understand what synthetic biology, what it is and what it's not for the ERDC in our approach to going through and dealing with our very large stakeholder, the DoD. And again, sort of what's the fine line between biotechnology and synthetic biology? and does it matter? I guess, again, it's going to matter to individual customers, but, from customer to customer, does it matter? What does it mean to them? So as we were thinking about this business plan, we have a bunch of different pieces of the puzzle. And again, the individual breakout groups are represented here. And as we're thinking about it, we have synthetic biology as a bit of a hub here. There are important things that we have to identify. For example, our customers. What are our customer needs? What are the problems that are out there? And those critical needs that need to be filled for our customers. So again, this isn't a perfectly networked system right here. These critical needs, this connects to our customers, and then the infrastructure development is going to be driven by that. So I think these are part of the bigger picture of the business plan that we need to think about in order to provide a business plan that's actionable and envision the products and services that ERDC can bring to the community of practice. So what's compelling about synthetic biology? This is, ultimately it's a new way to solve problems. And we instantly from there, that's all we needed to know, is that it's a new approach to solve problems. And then we started thinking about business, since that was our charge. So as we heard yesterday from some of the panelists, the basic research efforts are going strong within other Army laboratories, other Department of Defense laboratories. We're a little bit late to the game in a sense for big infrastructure development in synthetic biology. But one of the things that ERDC does do well is transitioning basic research into the 6.2, 6.3 arena. Again, marrying those marrying solutions to problems, adapting the synthetic biology into to niches that nobody else is thinking about. And ultimately, within our business plan, we never want to stop doing basic research. Again, it's critical that we maintain the ability to develop new and novel ideas within synthetic biology. So even though most folks are saying, hey, we missed the boat, we need to still continue to think about and pursue the basic research aspects. Now, so ERDC has experience in these fields. As we were kind of looking at these, how do we go through and broach relationships between stakeholders and the PIs that kind of do the research. The communications amongst the STs and TDs, I think that's going to be really important. Right now, I think this is the first major concerted effort into synthetic biology, and it was really informative yesterday. I think the first half of the day yesterday was an eye-opener and very helpful. And it's great that we have representation at the ASALT level right now, so that's super helpful. So, maintaining communications there to understand what the problems are, understand what the DoD need is, and that way we can go through and adapt our approaches to it. Things that we are doing now that I think maybe aren't represented in what we saw yesterday in synthetic biology are gene drives. Gene drive is not something that I think was mentioned at all yesterday, and that's something that we do have some experience in. Risk assessment is something that we do quite a bit, or have done quite a bit. And, again, a lot of the basic research that's going on now, they're trying to figure out, can we do this? And one of the critical pieces to taking it to the next stage is, how do we do it in a way that, is safe, that we can go through and apply these things in the environment. There's a lot of regulatory and safety issues that need to be thought about, and risk assessment is something that I think is going to be required in order to take these technologies into application. Also, another thing that we do that wasn't mentioned yesterday is a lot of working outside of the laboratory. So again, that specific transition of taking technology into the field and perhaps using it in the environment. And lastly, I think another place where ERDIC is strong is life cycle assessment. We've had a big investment from the EQ&I business area to go through and understand life cycle assessment of various materials, life cycle assessment of synthetic biology, materials derived from synthetic biology, or therapeutics, or whatever it may be. Understanding the life cycle of this technology is going to be critical in order to go through and have an effective business plan. So that's another piece where I think we could help. So here is just a great big list of things that we were thinking about. Again, we haven't had a ton of time to refine our sort of brainstorming, but here are some additional pieces that we thought were important. Connecting to these UARCs, the transition from 6.1, from ARL, and other folks that are already working on developing some capabilities and understanding how that we can apply those in the 6.2, 6.3 type of environment for ERDIC. Obviously, working with universities is a big way to go through and kind of spin up these technologies. I think I want to spend more time on the discussion part of this. I'm going to, just leave these up here for you to look at for a second and see if you agree. And actually, if it's okay, Brandon, maybe it's not the most productive for me to hear just to talk through all these slides. If you want to discuss any of these at any part, maybe we can do that to operate within our 1 hour, because I might talk about this, you'll get bored and you'll forget. So if you have a question or a comment, go ahead and just shout it out. So here's your first opportunity. Is there, for all the stuff that I've talked about so far, is there, anything that anybody wants to comment on or say, hey, Kurt, that's ridiculous, or hey, maybe we should chat more about that? Any thoughts thus far?
What's UARCs?
I don't know. What is it? I mean, I think this.
So I think with Santa Barbara and MIT and
University Associated Research Center.
Okay, that's it. So somebody had asked for the folks out there across the world, what's a UARC? And the UARC is the University, what was it again? University Affiliated Research Centers. So again, these collaborations between the DoD and the academic institutions. So the ICB, ICB is the man, I'm terrible with acronyms.
Institute for Collaborative Biosciences.
There we go. Institute for Collaborative Biosciences. There we go. So those type of things where we have industry and, where we have academics and government working together. So, yes, Don.
Oh, shoot. I didn't know it was going to be recorded. Now I might change my mind on what I was going to say. I don't know how big of a fan I am with UARCs. I get the ICB, I get the ISN. Sure, that's great for them to get funding. How does that help us here internally if there's a UARC set up for synthetic biology?
Well, hopefully it does help us. I guess through history, maybe it hasn't always. Ultimately, I think these are set up to develop capabilities and develop technologies with the thought that some of those will transition. I think that's the intent.
Yeah, I was going to say, we cannot get any money or any funding from that, but you can always partner with them or send people to learn. It's more of maybe a training place, or get collaborations, things that we don't have the capability, they might be able to, but definitely not getting funding from them.
So if we had like an MIT UARC in synthetic biology, does that detract from us, or does it really add to us, right?
Well, I think, if we're thinking strategically, if we can work in a collaborative way to solve a bigger problem, that's what we should be trying to do. Perhaps, for example, that biofoundry that MIT has is a raw material that could be used to go through and do a lot of different things and could perhaps provide the opportunity to solve those bigger problems. And I think that's what we're interested in doing, because right now, just looking at the ERDC and the capabilities and the infrastructure that we have, we don't have enough to get after some of the big problems that we'd like to, and partnering is a way to speed that up perhaps, or do things that we can't do ourselves. So I think where the challenge has been so far is to actually do it, to actually make it happen so that it does transition. A lot of times, they get money and they develop things that transition elsewhere. I think the folks that manage those programs have been struggling with it as well. How do we go through and actually leverage what has been developed at the university to go through and try to solve our big problems? So, I think the ability to communicate and collaborate in an effective manner would enhance that in a big way. And I think we're always looking for improvement in that. And maybe this is a platform. If we were able to go through, and right now there is a big collaborative thrust to come together and develop something great out of synthetic biology. Maybe this is a platform to do that.
I second Don's skepticism.
Rick just said that he seconds Don's skepticism.
So I have to say, we've had some success with ICB at the basic research staff, but it takes some work. I mean, because they don't need us, so we are trying to work with them. But they're usually really open. So we had some success, some papers coming out of it, 6 ones.
I just feel like if we back the establishment of a SynBio UARC somewhere,
Yeah.
there has to be something more concrete about information flow or co-writing proposals or something where we get something more concrete out of it.
Yeah. I think that's going to be on us, though, to put the work on it.
So for the EL strategic planning this year, I did some poking around looking at publications EL has come out with and terminology within the greater scientific literature. And one of the things I found was some of our biggest projects are our best products. The most recognizable work that we've done is in the applied research. Not saying that that our basic research isn't useful or we need to stop. We definitely need to continue. But the place where the UARCs could come in is to provide the basic research, additional basic research that we can then use to transition to applied research. And that could be the incoming communication that was just being talked about. We partner with the people who've already done the basic research. That way we don't have to relearn it and reinvent their wheel in order to move forward into applied projects with it.
There's probably not a great way to harvest the information that's coming out of the UARCs right now. Again, a lot of the information that we saw yesterday is the first time that I've seen the information coming out of ARL and University of Texas, Austin. So I think this is going to be a continued theme of just the communication and the ability to go through and see what people are doing. We don't even know what we're doing together. This is the first time I've seen a lot of this work that's at the back of the room. So, we don't communicate effectively as an organization. It's even harder as we're looking out further into sort of the greater collaboration space where the DoD has made big investments in basic research through these UARCs. So I guess we need to try to envision a way that we can go through and bring that information together so that we can learn and, augment. Again, it seems like there's a bunch of nuclei of work that's going on and we're not synergizing it. Being able to first learn about it gives us the opportunity to then synergize it, I think.
Beyond UARCs, just, working with universities, working with some of the other DoD labs, I'm going to have to say that what's held me back in trying to obtain training or visiting labs is, you know, this is outside any kind of current funding effort that I have. So where would I go to get funding? To be able to, you know, get that training? I think that's the big thing. You know, you can't go to a meeting unless you're presenting something. So you can't go to a SynBio meeting to make those contacts unless you've already got a project in SynBio. So just overall comments from the room on that.
Yeah, I guess, you know, this is a question, that's a management question. I can't help you with that one, but, you know, if anybody wants to, yeah, I agree that it would be very nice to have some type of sponsorship to go through and learn new techniques and, or you know, be embedded in a laboratory that's doing this type of work. And again, just like you said, I mean, we all work on funded projects, so you're kind of stealing from a project to go through and spend time to go learn about developing a new one. So any thoughts on, you know, is there a way to go through and fund training, so sort of like maybe mini sabbaticals or something like that?
The answer is yes. So you can get CP training for stuff like this, CP 16, CP 18. The biggest challenge I've seen with that is identifying a course. The CPs, in my experience, like to have a thing that you go do, like so they can go see a website that you're going to go do a course, or there's a specific training that's in a university structure, classes, that kind of stuff. But labs have the ability to send their employees to do training on, I don't know how other labs do it, but I think almost all the labs have overhead money that they can use for training every year. It's not a ton of money, but it's some. And the way that we got funded to do this, FIF, which is now Flex 4, I think is what they're calling it. FIF has money in it for human capital. So when people go and do their PhDs, and ERDIC pays for them to do long-term training, that's FIF paid for, and that's considered training. Sabbaticals are a thing that you can apply for through FIF. Those are usually 6 months, but they don't have to be. I think they can be shorter than that. So there are some options to do that. In my experience, most of the time, all of those things have their, you know, we work in a large organization that's part of a large organization that has a lot of administrative and bureaucratic things. And so the biggest challenge that I've seen with that is somebody identifies a training opportunity with a short time window to go, and that's a challenge. So if this is something you're looking for and thinking about, I think you can find opportunities to do that, and I think you can be successful finding funding. We don't, in my experience, we don't have a lot of people that are asking you to go to training that give enough time to fill out all the paperwork and make it happen that get told no, in my experience.
So just to clarify, I agree with Fiona completely, and I think all of us have had that experience where we have a colleague in another lab that says, come on over, we'll train you on this instrument, we'll train you with this technique. It's like maybe a 1 week, very informal thing. There's no class associated, there's nothing like that. And that is a major hurdle for us to get some informal training. I think maybe if it's across labs, like Ryan says, oh, come on up and I'll teach you, you know, how to deal with these plants or whatever, that maybe is easier. But when we're talking about academia, I mean, Brandon, how do we deal with that? Because we have those opportunities, but we don't. You know, we have a lot of academic partners that say, oh, come on up for a week. But how do we do that? Because we do have to charge it to our current projects, and we don't have the ability to use the CP system because it's not an official class. And if it's very informal, excuse me, how do we request training funds through our branch?
So this is probably a cynical perspective, and I'm putting this on a live stream, so let's keep it between us. But you know, training is one of those things that gets, as a supervisor, I get rated on, you know, workforce development stuff every year, and my boss does, and his boss does, right up the chain. So I think that is your challenge, because to get it paid for, it needs to be able to check a box that it looks like official training, because then it goes on a spreadsheet that somebody can track as official training, and then it goes into another spreadsheet that gets counted towards, Lab of the Year awards and those kinds of things, right? That's my cynical perspective, right? If you can do that, if you can find a way to make that look like, I don't know, that makes it sound like we're trying to cheat the system. That's what we're trying to do. But if you find a way to make it official, right? To make it where if it's at a university, make it a class, right? Universities can make classes that are training classes, and then that's something that can happen through the ERDIC University program, right? There's ways to think about doing that can make it easier for your management to say yes. I mean, I guess that's what I would say. As a branch chief, that's what I would say. I don't know, I've never met any branch chief in ERDIC that wants to tell an employee, no, you can't go get training to do your job better, right? But there are certain things that administratively it just gets hard to do, right? So anyway, maybe that's helpful, maybe that's not, but that's what I would say.
So we talked a lot about training, but I also want to mention there's another venue that we can explore to add the expertise or skill sets to our workforce in a quick way, which is hiring, direct hiring. So because training takes a long time, and I mean training takes maybe a week or two, but to get the skills up and running, and maybe it'll take years. And I don't know if our customer can wait that long for us to provide any products, because essentially we're soft money funded agency. So I don't know if we any programs can afford to build our capabilities over 5 years. So I would say maybe hiring is a quick way to to get us in this playground.
Yep. I think that's another group's charge coming up here.
It's not this one?
We don't want to steal their thunder too much.
All right, okay. Maybe I was ahead of it.
But yeah, certainly strategic hires, human capital is going to be super important.
Can I just go back to what Brandon was saying real quick with the, wouldn't part of the business plan be identifying, and this goes back to Carrie's comment and Fiona's comment, identifying how ERDIC can carve out funds that aren't traditionally training programs, but are ad hoc opportunities to learn new methods that increase value.
Yeah, we're just
of research
innovating
to the ERDIC.
Yeah, innovating the process of training and learning and all that stuff.
I mean, Brandon just mentioned like FIF funding. Why can't ERDIC develop a panel that accepts applications for short-term opportunities using those funds, like travel funds or something, to send people, and it's on us to justify, why we need to go and how it's going to add value to the ERDIC. But then it's not on us to coordinate with the university to get them to offer a course, that then we can apply for. That seems ridiculous.
Well, it's one of those things where you just have to blaze trails. If you want that training, do it. I'm not a manager. I'm just a PI up here. If there's something I want to do, I try to find a way to do it. Try to burrow through. Sometimes I do it the wrong way and get in trouble. But you've already learned at that point, and then you've got it. They can't take education. They can never take it away from you. So so that would be my plug, is to just find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. If you want to get trained on something, there's got to be a way to do it, and management will catch up. That's you know, that's their job to figure out, you know, how does that count towards making our university or our organization look better? You know, it just got to be creative and just, you know, if you need it, do it.
Well, management has to be proactive too. They
Mm-hmm.
just can't be reactive.
I mean, the idea, I think you brought up an interesting opportunity. Why can't we take some of those FIF funds and put it into, you know, sort of a training bin of some kind where we can go through, and if people want to learn, let them learn. If it, you know, goes through and it works towards, you know, furthering our business or innovative capabilities, do it.
To move the conversation beyond this, I think a good thing to capture for us for this is that it seems clear that there's, for us to move forward in this area, that we need some training opportunities, potentially some short-term opportunities that don't have current funding avenues. So having this group in some way engage with human capital, the Human Capital Office, to look at potential opportunities for that, I think that's a good thing to capture as a do-out maybe for our report.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a piece of the puzzle.
So I was just going to mention, Michael, we do cover a little bit of that in number 3, and that kind of concept is on our slide.
Man, we're stealing everybody's stuff, sorry.
This slide's ours.
Okay, so we don't even have to talk about this slide then. No, just quickly, yeah, community of practice within the ERDIC I think is super important. It's something that we probably need to develop semi-formally to go through and just keep up to date with the synthetic biology stuff that's going on across the ERDIC. It's just helpful to know. Again, having that communication rift doesn't help us. If we know what's going on across folks that are commonly interested in synthetic biology, you know, that provides us the opportunity to cross-pollinate and synergize. So I won't steal any more of Michael's future slide here. We went through and tried to capture things that we're working on now. And actually, I'll draw your attention to the red bullet at the bottom first is, you know, the things that we have in these bullets are just what our group was able to identify. And you know, there are posters in the back that aren't even represented here. So if you look at this, I mean, there's several bullets. We're doing several things that are in the synthetic biology realm. And so we're doing stuff. This is all, for the most part, you know, PI generated. This is not a top-down kind of thing. These are projects that were kind of built from the bottom up. Interest in, you know, from various PIs and connections with various customers. And you know, this spans a pretty broad space. So, you know, one of the things, you know, I don't know that anybody loves ERDICpedia. Maybe it's a spot where we can house some of this stuff. I kind of like the idea of more of, you know, kind of the monthly calls. Maybe ERDICpedia is a solution, I don't know. But, you know, just looking across what we're doing, a lot of this, you know, screams ERDIC. The harmful algal bloom controls using RNAi, plant controls. I mean, this is in the civil works realm, so it's a little bit outside of, you know, what's brought us together as the Army-focused stuff. But we have civil works projects that are working in SynBio that are, you know, very much ERDIC-centric. The aptamer and toehold switch type of stuff, we just found out that ARL and CCDC, CBC, there, did I get it right? You know, they're working on some stuff there, so I think we could probably partner with them to make what we're doing better, transition it quicker. You know, some new things, the molecular Velcro 6.1 idea that Michael Mayo has helped spearhead. This is something that can probably transition, I think, probably in the medical science part of Army's portfolio, so we need to get in touch with them. One thing that we've been expanding in is the independent verification and validation for DARPA, not VARPA, DARPA. So we've been doing that for Insect Allies. This has actually been getting us up to speed on some of the state-of-the-art technologies in synthetic biology and some really interesting applications that do have a little bit of an ERDIC flavor to them, so it's nice. one of the areas that we identified that was, I think, just not covered is, risk. In environmental reconnaissance, a lot of this, the idea of putting bugs out in the environment, what's the risk associated with that, or what are the diagnostics? I mean, can we go through and understand if Russia is trying to, plant sensors in the environment based on, identifying synthetically modified bugs? The gene drive propagation, I don't think that was sort of removed from the Army's portfolio. There was a focus area looking at the risk of environmental risks of synthetic biology that died as the Army modernization plan kind of rolled out. But these gene drive propagations, these are things that we need to understand from, adversaries aren't worried about the ethics of this stuff. If they can get a competitive advantage against us, they could potentially launch gene drives against us. So we should understand what's going on there. So, this is an area that, again, I don't think has been talked about enough, and it's an area that we at least have, we have some background information. Manipulation of I don't remember. Oh, that's Carl's thing. So, the manipulation of biomineralization pathways, I think that has some crossover to, development of in situ pavement development. Definitely cool stuff. Partnering there would be great. And synthetic gene circuits, we're working a little bit there as well. A lot of that through the partnerships with various universities. And I'm sorry if I didn't, harvest posters. This is a place, perhaps we could, it could be as simple on the Erdicpedia as just having the titles of every single one of these presentations so that we know who, titles and authors, so that we know who's working on what in general vein of synthetic biology. Again, communication, that's a place that would definitely be helpful. We started brainstorming on previously unsolvable problems. Invasive species, that's a place that we're working in that I don't think a lot of people are. Recalcitrant compounds, so PFAS is right now, everybody, if you're not aware, the DOD and lots of other places are up in arms about PFAS contamination. It's everywhere, it's very difficult to deal with. Perhaps synthetic biology is a solution. Can we do some of the type of work that we saw from ARL South yesterday? Can we do directed evolution to invent some bugs that can actually break this stuff? Because all the typical chemical processes that people are using are so hard and so expensive right now. Maybe biology can be that solution. Let's see, what else? So, unsolvable problems. I don't know if we're stepping on the toes of another area here, but does anybody else want to pitch out one of those problems that seems very difficult that they feel like synthetic biology, could help with? I understand wanting to, keep it if it's your idea for the next 6-1 proposal, but if there's something that's, it's, hey, I don't know much about this, but we have this big problem in the field, like in a cold region or somewhere that we don't really know how to fix, and maybe, synthetic biology is a way. Okay, that's fine. So this is a lot of bullets. So the business model, business plan, we're exploring a lot of different ways to approach this. And, AI going through and harvesting needs out there in the needs in the, not in the environment, but just out in the world, I guess, in the information world where there are, publications on problems, there are publications on technologies, there is information about funding sources, kind of reaching back to the CERTIP conference a year back where there was somebody from IBM Watson that was talking about how universities are now that like the sponsored research programs for lots of universities are now using AI to go through and help direct their faculty towards funding opportunities that have high probability of success. I think that's something that perhaps we should apply here. I think we have some of the capabilities in ITL to do some AI-directed, just sort of gathering information in, processing it, and finding perhaps where those big problems are, where, you know, ERDIC has a niche, where, you know, there are partnerships perhaps that would help, you know, get towards that big problem. You know, I think it's an underutilized tool that, you know, other, you know, universities are using it now, and you know, so far as I can tell, within the ERDIC, we're all, you know, these armies of one. We're PIs that are going through and finding things and writing grants. You know, some of the grants, there's just fierce competition, and perhaps we're missing things out there that are, you know, that we'd have a better probability of competing for if we just knew. So again, the value of information, the communication, perhaps AI could be a tool to go through and get us informed about how we could, you know, use synthetic biology. But I think this is beyond synthetic biology, just really any type of grant opportunities within our wheelhouse. But, you know, we could do some that are directed towards synthetic biology. You know, and from there, we have our traditional approach where PIs come up with ideas, you know, trying to solve problems. A lot of times those are very nicely contained in a, you know, digestible package. Either they go or they don't go. It would be nice to go through and have, you know, each team has a business plan. If we can have that, you know, perhaps understood a little bit better as it moves up through management. You know, I think the branch chiefs probably have a good idea of the business plans. Division chiefs, you know, it's probably a little tougher, but, you know, just having them be some advocates, probably even more so, it'd be nice if the TDs and STs knew what we were doing too, so that way they can market it when they're out and, you know, talking with potential customers. So, you know, again, just having that top-down approach. You know, as we're just kind of skimming around the world of business plans, I mean, can ERDIC work as a general contractor? You know, that's something that I think other, you know, within GSL, they do that a lot, where, you know, they essentially, they identify some problem and they identify some solution that's maybe not necessarily in the ERDIC, but draw that together, you know, and kind of manage that from, you know, understanding the solution, putting a plan and infrastructure together to solving that problem, and help get, for example, an industry partner or an academic partner or some other government group to go through and get the customer and the you know, innovation provider together, and then, you know, have ERDIC facilitate, you know, doing the problem solving in a logical way. So again, just kind of thinking outside of the box of our normal plan, but sort of having ERDIC work as that general contractor to, you know, solve a problem by, you know, identifying the problem, identifying a technology source, bringing it together, working together to go through and solve that big problem. Let me see, some of this other stuff. Okay, civil works. You know, civil works, you know, is often so separated from what we do on the Army side, but, you know, civil works is an area that we can transition a lot of this. You know, how do we develop this business plan where we have to keep our Army and civil works separated? I mean, it's a somewhat artificial separation, but a legally mandated separation that has to happen. How can we cross-pollinate? And let's see. Yeah, again, just some of the areas that I think ERDIC could do well. You know, again, a lot of those lie within our core capabilities and areas where we're the leads. Any thoughts on this? Again, this is just, oh, Carl?
Just a comment about the civil works and synthetic biology. We discussed it in our group a little bit, but, you know, in general, I think because of at least the programs here, their timelines and how they tolerate very little basic research in their projects, that any civil works investments in synthetic biology are really going to be built on the investments that have come from the military side. So, you know, as we move the military side's where we have the ability to really do the basic research and make the strategic investments, and the civil works, it could benefit, but it's going to be built on those military investments.
Yeah.
I would think that because the dollars aren't there and the timelines aren't there to develop those types of materials.
Yeah, I remember another thing that we had talked about is, a lot of times there's a disconnect on the civil works side. They're out there solving very specific problems, and a lot of times they don't necessarily understand the technology. Synthetic biology is complicated, even for biologists, and kind of helping them understand how it works. And I think one of the things, and this is, Alan helped us out with this idea of perhaps we can go through and for our civil works customers, just help them understand what, develop a strategy. A lot of times that they're kind of awed by, boy, this really looks like a neat solution. Let's try this. Perhaps we could provide them a more structured approach to, build towards a solution instead of, a lot of times they'll be, it's like, boy, this solution looks really neat. Let's try it. Then it doesn't work, and well, then they pivot to the next one, where perhaps there could have been a more organized effort to go through and strategically work through the problem and get to a solution. Any other thoughts on the business plan stuff? I think we're pretty close to being done here. This is the next substantive slide. And we have 7 minutes.
So this question was for Alan, I guess. Alan, when you look at the business model plan that Kurt has up here, is there anything that's missing that we need to convince, say, Dr. Pittman or Dr. Perkins to take this forward to somewhere else? Are we missing anything here?
Oop. This is it kind of summarized.
So since you asked me, I think the part that's missing is there are parts there, but you need to raise yourself up one level, right? So kind of building off all the discussion about training in the for a little bit before. And one question, I think it was a comment Katrina made, you referred to the branch chief. And I think that's a flawed assumption underneath there. You need to go past your branch chief, right? You don't need to ask them for something. Management is like children. You need to give them direction. Okay? You got parts of a plan, but I think if you're going to convince anybody, whether it's training needs to be a component of this, or we need to partner with people, or that whole package needs to be put together. And to me that goes, you've touched on all the parts, is you've identified all the research that's being done. That's got to go a little bit farther into a vision of what is our niche and what it is we might produce, which begs, if we're going to produce something, who's it for? So out of all those customers, I heard civil works, I heard military, I heard different things. Are we going to pursue every one of them? Or are there certain key opportunities that are here, right?
You have to make decisions.
That's right. That's the part that I think is kind of missing, is sort of taking it to that next level, sort of bringing it all together. Whether you get it right or not, but sort of a general statement to say, here is our opportunity, right? That there is work out there and there's money behind it. To get there, here are the people we need. Here's the training that they have to have. Here are the people that we have to engage, either as a partner or as a customer, right? And then here's the foundation for initial funding to get this going. And then here's our commitment on the other end, is this is what we promise to sort of bring back the other way. Then somebody in management can say, yes, because I'm going to reject you as a prior branch chief on your training, regardless of what he said, right? Unless you can convince me it's important in some sense, right? So you want to get that all bedded into a broader picture, right? So I see you bringing up a lot of things, but somehow it needs to coalesce into something that a simple person like myself can say, hey, I can take that and make it look like I know what I'm doing, and I can approach somebody, and I may not fully understand what each every one of you do, but I can understand the big picture on that point. And if we can get them excited, then we can bring additional people in. That's, to me, is sort of the key thing out there. It's like bits and pieces, but it's still not all brought together. So, sorry to dump on you, but.
Oh, that's fine. We're
Fear
only
lead.
talking about one of 5 pieces, so.
Yep.
So we'll bring it all together at the end, right? Well, I think this is just about it. You know, engaging management. Ellen just said that it doesn't matter. We have to provide them direction. So that's what we should do. We should provide management direction. So forget the other stuff that's on here. And yeah, I guess if you need to get in touch with us, this is us. And I think all this stuff gets shared at the end or something. So any remaining questions or concerns? Sweet, that means I'm done. With a couple minutes to spare.
Thanks. So my group was tasked with defining ERDIC's role in the DoD SynBio community. And no, I didn't go home and do my homework. I hung out at the Cottonwood last night, so I don't have fancy backgrounds. But the team members are Robin Barbado, myself, Jonathan Brooks, Rebecca Crouch, Ping Gong, Mike Mayo, Harley McAlexander, Bobby Stromer, and Natalia Venus. We had 3 different labs represented, which gave us good diversity, but we didn't capture everything. And so this list was what we came up with, and I'll caveat that with, we don't know everything that goes on at ERDIC. This list is not comprehensive. We will probably identify, hopefully in this discussion, a lot more areas where we can contribute with synthetic biology. So are we a leader? Not yet. I think it became apparent to everybody who was in attendance yesterday. We kind of missed out with the ARAP. We're catching up now. That doesn't mean that we can't get there. It just means we're going to have to be a little more clever and creative to make sure that we play catch up. And so where can ERDIC be a leader in SynBio? The low-hanging fruit I put in bold. So what was mentioned yesterday with ARL being in talks with ITL already, the high-performance computational biology. The information management, sharing, storage, manipulation, that's a huge bottleneck with synthetic biology, and it's only going to get worse as the technology progresses. The high-performance computational biology seems like it's something that ITL should be jumping on right now, figuring out where we can contribute and we can be a leader in that area. The testing in nature, survivability, a lot of these technologies that we heard about yesterday and other ones out there, they're being developed in the lab. Can they survive in the environment in which they're supposed to be performing their duties? We don't know. Most of it is basic research. We do a lot of work with survivability. We do a lot of applied research with real-world situations. I think that's another low-hanging fruit that we should be addressing. The third is risk assessment. These things that are being made are not natural. There's a lot of concern. We talked about yesterday how much fear there could be with the public with releasing these new machines. Risk assessment is a strength of ERDIC. It's something we should be a leader in assessing the risks of synthetic biology. The cold domain, that's one of ERDIC's strengths too. Do these materials that are being produced even perform at Fort Greely or in other cold areas? That's something we should be testing, or we should probably be developing technologies that actually work in these environments. Civil Works has been mentioned. Civil Works doesn't fund a lot of basic research, but we can adapt military research to fit Civil Works. So the pavement that was shown yesterday, a tweak might be able to get it to fix concrete structures on dams and other locations. And then for that matter, you could take something like that for GSL. So maybe their pavement is brittle. Maybe there's a process we can tweak and we can make blast protection improvements. So there is a lot of crossover. Once we have technology, we can probably develop applications that go in a number of different ways. And then the final low-hanging fruit that we came up with was soil. We have a lot of expertise in soil across ERDC. We have soil physicists, soil chemists, soil biologists, soil modelers. We cover every facet of soils. Anything that involves soil manipulation, soil extraction, we should be a leader in. We should be working in that realm. And the soil is very important in mobility, in just about anything that we do. We need soils. We need to work with soils. So. And then some of the other ones that we discussed that aren't exactly low-hanging fruit, that will require some thought and investment, subterranean environments, environmental sensing, which can include any number of directions, bioremediation, extreme environments, not just cold environments, but you can imagine what those are. Surveying. Then material science was discussed yesterday. Spectral sensitive and anti-material. There are so many different directions that you can go. Those are such broad subjects. We have niches in those areas. Like I mentioned with the blast protection. If somebody else developed something, we can tweak it. We can improve it to fit our needs, for the Army needs. We just need to have a better understanding of where we're going with those. And then, like I said, once this is more fully developed, once we have some footing and people know what synthetic biology can do, this application can be developed for just about any focus area across ERDC. If somebody, a synthetic biologist, sat down with a material scientist and just told them, here are some examples of what was developed, here's what we can do, let their wheels spin for a while, I would imagine that they could probably come up with some, wonderful material that could be produced that can't be produced now. And we need more of that. We need more engagement, we need more collaboration, and I think the sky's the limit as far as what synthetic biology can do across ERDC. So, what have we missed? Any comments? I'm speechless.
Is that your only slide?
No, but close. This is the meat of it. We had a lot of discussion about our role and where we could fit, and we were hoping that other people would have additional thoughts. Kurt.
I agree. These look good. They look like, where ERDC sits within SynBio. So, yeah, this is, I don't know. You guys see anything else that we could add?
I'd like to hear from the group some different thoughts about, I like the technology areas, but what about on the spectrum of, especially since we're talking a lot about military funding, on the spectrum of military funding, where's ERDC's role in the community in the spectrum of 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4? Where does the group think, where's our niche there? And now, and if that's different, where would we like to be if that's not where we are now?
So I think one area that maybe could be higher on the list if it's on there is, so we have a lot of experience with monitoring the environment, whether that's at a population level, an organismal level, or really, in terms of what my team does and some other teams do at a molecular level, at a genetic level. And so I think we have a unmatched capability, at least amongst the labs that were here yesterday, to potentially detect the presence of manufactured or synthetic biology in the environment, right? And so that's, whether that's the survey and monitoring, kind of biothreat surveillance in the environment kind of stuff. I think that we have a capability there that those other labs certainly can't match, and that I think that we could help potential stakeholders understand the importance of. So that's one area I think maybe that could be higher on the list. And then as far as where we fall in terms of the various 6, 6.1 to 6 whatever. For me, things always kind of get fuzzy above like the 6.3 level as to exactly what the different levels, correspond to, and so that might help to kind of talk about that really briefly as well.
Well, I'd like to address, Brandon's question about where Simba would be in terms of 6.1, 6.2, 6.3s. So, in my opinion, Symbio is approach, is a technical approach. Basically, you develop tools, right? And to get 6.1 funding, you have to tie the Symbio to a specific question, a basic research question. So I found it's really hard to get, funding for Symbio alone in terms of 6.1 funds. But 6.2, 6.3 is a different story, So yesterday, I think the ARO South person, he talked about he's only engaged in, developing tools. I don't know how he can get the 6.1 funds to do tool development. But here, our 6.1, especially military programs, I have no luck to get the funding just by doing for example, bioinformatics tool development. So, yeah, speaking of bioinformatics, I think that's one technical area probably we need to get into and get the more maybe some I don't know. It seems like everybody's doing bioinformatics, but maybe we need to get somebody doing that more focus on that and provide some bioinformatics support to the not just the EL but everybody in this community.
Not everybody has our computing resources.
Exactly, and expertise too, right? So right now I feel like Rick's team and Carl's team and our team, we all do, and also allow they all do bioinformatics. And also the another problem is infrastructure. So to do Symbio, to do the genetic engineering, you need some basic infrastructure, instruments, and not everybody can do it. Even though you want to do it, but you either collaborate with somebody outside or within ERDC to develop it. Either bioinformatics tools or Symbio, genetic engineering tools. So that's it.
Anyone else? So we did talk a little bit about the.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I'll just leave it there. Go ahead.
No, you can go back to that list.
Oh, this is the next slide.
You can go back to the.
Oh, you okay?
Okay, so, sorry, Carl. When I look at this list, to me, it looks very much like a list of what ERDC does, right? You could have gone to a website and found what ERDC's primary capabilities are, right? So I want to be careful because there's that list and then there's Symbio in relation to that list. I would suggest maybe we map the portfolio of projects to these areas. And I have a feeling environmental sensors or bioremediation may be the two that pop out, where we have all of our SynBio experience. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's just off the top of my head. So what we'd have to describe in this list is, not only do we have the, you know, the great HPC capability, but how would we use it to be a SynBio leader? So I think that this list is a start, but I think there's a lot to be put forth with every bullet on how we actually become the SynBio leader in that area. Because otherwise, environmental sensors would probably pop up to the top of the list, because that's where we do all of our SynBio, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. The second comment, if I have time, I'm just going to put this out there. I just don't know if it's right or not. But I tell you what, when I looked at that Psychrophile poster, is anyone else doing something where we could develop a new chassis for a new environment? Is that the one thing that pops to the top of something that we could start doing that nobody else anywhere is doing? Because I can look at all those other ones, I could probably find examples in the literature of people doing a lot of things. But are people doing cold domain type chassis? I don't know. And is that something we could start?
Fiona.
Well, there is a sixth one on that.
New one starting?
Yeah, I mean, this is going on already, yeah.
There's a
sixth
poster.
one, yeah.
Allison's poster, right? Yeah.
So that's funded, yeah. But there's other people working with Psychrophiles.
I know there's been some work trying to bring down temperatures for getting metabolic processes to work that normally occur at higher temperatures to bring it down, but I don't know how low.
Yeah, I mean, I would second Natalia's and Allison's comment. There are other people working in Psychrophiles. You could even say like the Marinobacter that the Navy's looking at is kind of probably a Psychrophile. As everybody was talking, I went on to discover ERDIC and just typed synthetic biology, because actually what I was trying to do was I was trying to see if the web page for the environmental impacts of synthetic biology was still up, and I couldn't get to it, but it's come up with like 425 results. Now, some of those are repeated, but there's quite a few sort of like project summaries in there from Don and Michael and Kurt's team. Some other things pop up from like the 6-1 call on synthetic biology. So maybe that's a way to kind of start mining like what Don was suggesting. You know, trying to find out where people are really working within ERDIC on these capabilities, and to try to see if there's something that no one else is working on. But so that's what I had to say.
Thanks.
And Igor's team has been working a lot on the risk assessment part and biosafety and biosecurity. So I'm not sure how much funding is there right now, but there's some efforts going on.
We ignored funding.
Yeah, they don't need any more.
I just want to make a comment for the room that when we were discussing this, we were, looking at the question that said define ERDIC's role in the DoD SynBio community. I think we looked a little more specifically at Army. What is the ERDIC role in the Army SynBio community? So when people are referencing academia and whatnot, that's not necessarily relevant. What can ERDIC do for Army SynBio? But also, we didn't necessarily look at things that were just unique in the SynBio community. There may be others doing similar things, but are they doing them for Army, I think is sort of the direction we came at this from, and I think the direction the question was intended to sort of flesh things out in. If we're gonna try to be unique, I don't think we can. We can be ERDIC, we can be Army leaders in SynBio, but I mean, we're never gonna be, unless enormous amounts of funding comes in, we're never gonna be world leaders, right? I mean, like, we're not gonna compete with people that have hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, or.
But we're really good at Army relevance. You
That's
know,
right.
we have to answer that question at every step of every proposal process. You know, why aren't other people doing this work? And that answer is Army relevance. You know, people are doing it for this reason. They're doing it for this reason. We need to do it for the Army for this reason. And yeah, there are people doing work for the Army, like DARPA funding, DoD. Yeah, that's our next. I'll go to the next slide. So we also answered who are our competitors and who are our partners. The answer pretty much is our competitors are our partners right now. So since we're behind, we're playing catch up, we're going to have to interact with hopefully future competitors. So ARL wants us to take some of their 6.1 work and run with it and develop tools from it. And we can do that. We can use that to build our capabilities. We can build up our expertise. And then at some point, hopefully level the playing field, and then there'll be more of a competitor. Anything that's funded by DARPA right now is a competitor. They're doing a lot of synthetic bio work for DoD, things that, you know, we could have been doing in a few years given a little bit of traction. And then industry. DOE labs, they're doing SynBio work, not exactly military specific, but they are doing work that overlaps. And then the partners, the same people, we need to partner with them for now until we can get on their level. And so that answers the question, do we need S&T partners? Yes, at this point, yes. We aren't capable of doing standalone synthetic biology work on the level that other people, the leaders in the field, are doing. And so it's going to require collaboration with these outside organizations. And it's going to require a commitment to foster these relationships, creatives and a lot of creative relationships. You know, we know people in academia, we know people at other labs. It's going to be fostering those relationships and improving our own capabilities. So what do we need to accomplish to get on a level playing field? In the short term, we're going to have to function as tech transfer agents. We're going to take other people's basic research and we're going to further develop it. We need to seek inclusion at all levels. We need to do basic research. We need to fund 6.1 projects that build the tools and the capabilities. We need to fund 6.2, 6.3 research that builds applications. The applications are kind of the bread and butter. We need to develop our core competency. And then in the midterm, we need to build up our capabilities. So, you know, think FIF program. The one that struck me yesterday was the picture that was up there that had about 8 different machines on it. That's millions of dollars. We can't just go out and put that in a lab and start doing that work. We need a commitment by ERDIC to build these capabilities to where we can actually get to that point. And then long term, our goal should be to become a leader in Army SynBio R&D and applications that are wholly within our mission space. The discussion we just had, you know, we have a laundry list of our mission areas. We should be able to provide synthetic biology solutions to any of our customers in any of those areas. And it's going to require us to get out and inform them what can be done. It's the same discussion Kurt had about civil works. Just talking to our customers and letting them know the technology that's possible will go a long way towards doing that once we're in a position where we can actually do that work. Any comments? Questions?
Then I have a comment. So you mentioned that you stated that we could not do all of synthetic biology. You said something like to that effect, right? So where are we weakest? In the design, build, test, learn loop? Where are we weakest? Where do we need to build capability?
My opinion would be the design phase. I think we lack some of the facilities that, you know, take a look at MIT, the facilities that they have. You know, that we were talking about transformation yesterday, and some of these places have robotic transformation arms that can do orders of magnitude above what somebody by hand can do. You know, if we're going to spend 2 weeks transforming something and they can do it in 2 hours, that's a huge plus for them. So maybe capacity, but I'm sure other people can chime in here, have thoughts on that. Nobody. Thanks, Carl.
Just throw it over when you're done.
I agree with Ryan. I think we are weakest on the design and probably the build. Yes, we don't have the high throughput capabilities. Yes, we are limited in personnel that are actually working at the bench. But then I think at the same time, a few of us are possibly lacking in understanding how parts get put together to make an actual expression vector, to make the product that we want. So whether that means that we need training or we have to hire, like Ping suggested, ORISE people with that training, that would be up to the group. Okay?
My comment, you know, I was going to ask Jimmy yesterday when he showed us that slide with all the machines, you know, what is that investment worth? Not collectively the machines, but the space, the plates that contain all the pieces and parts, and, you know, sort of the probably AI-driven software that, you know, puts all that stuff together. Because I would think it's a pretty substantial investment. And when I saw that, and I've been thinking this for a while, is that, you know, I think what that represents is that BioFoundry slide represents the core of what synthetic biology is. If, you know, if we were to distinguish it from biotechnology, that's at its core, that sort of robotic, AI-driven, you know, DNA synthesis, sequencing, high throughput platform. And the question for us is that really where we're going to play? Or do we play on the outer edges of that, where we have expertise in various different biological systems that we have knowledge of, not only, you know, how to grow them or harvest them, or, you know, their interactions in the environment. We have the ability to do some characterizations of them. And then at some point, these represent the biodiversity, the genetic, the physiological biodiversity of the ecosystem. And, you know, these guys that do synthetic biology want access to that information so that they can reprogram it or, you know, put it back together in different ways. Is that really, you know, where we exist, on the outer edges of characterizing unique systems, you know, and doing some of the fundamental characterizations? We could still be doing physiology and genomics and stuff, but not tearing the systems apart and redesigning them at a higher level. The other part of that is when something comes out of a BioFoundry, that somebody reprogrammed something and they did something really cool, to give it back to us and say, hey, we're going to go and put this back in the environment. You've redesigned my environmental bug to do something really cool. Now I'm going to go test and see if evolution is going to, you know, change that overnight, and, you know, you have to go back to the drawing board. So I think that a lot of the work we do feeds into synthetic biology's core, and we could be taking a lot of that stuff out of the core. But the question for this group is, you know, are we going to make that $20 to $40 million investment in a BioFoundry? Do we have, is that part of the business plan?
Yeah, I think we as a group have to come up with that.
So just because I've been hanging out with Don Kropek a little too long, I'm becoming jaded and negative as well, but in a lovable way. I just, the thought, and I don't know how to phrase this properly, but the thought that we need to compete and that we need to be leaders, it seems somewhat absurd to me, because we're literally, I mean, this is it. This is us. This is the SynBio people, the people who are interested in it. And within this group, there's literally a handful of us that are in the lab. So how are we going to compete? We can't compete. We don't have the resources. Our TD shop doesn't fund this at the level where we can actually have these resources. So just like a small school trying to compete against a big school, let's not even think in those terms. We need to figure out what is ERDIC's mission, which our mission is nebulous. You make it safer and better. What is that, right? So whatever ERDIC's mission or role is at that moment, I think our job is to react to that very specific question, that very specific problem that ERDIC has, and they need internal people to react quickly to solve a problem. And I guess because a lot of us are 6-1 people, we don't tend to work in that way, but the civil works people do. There's a problem, it needs to be addressed, and they try to solve it. They try to fix it. And I think maybe that's where we need to be with SynBio. There's a very specific mission, there's a very specific task, and we have to react. Because I don't think we can lead, and I don't think that we can compete at this large scale. I mean, ARL and Air Force, that was ridiculous. We can't even come close to that. So, I don't know.
So we should nix the design,
Excuse me?
nix the design phase, and just go straight to build and test?
I don't know. I mean, react. Yeah.
We have a role in
Application,
design
maybe?
phase, too. Because the fundamental information that we're generating in new organisms. Hello? Fundamental information that we're generating in these organisms is part of that process. I mean, even in Jimmy's slide, and I forgot one of them, but he had this task or design 1, design 2, and part of it was just that fundamental information of harvesting some of those systems, so, but we can only take that so far. We can't reprogram it and do massive, high throughput screening of thousands of combinations of things. Not unless somebody wants to throw a ton of money at us for a long time, with that goal in mind.
So that level of discovery is probably
And, I mean, technology is always making it cheaper, so that biofoundry of the future might be like a sequencer now, where it's modular and you can do it on a small scale. And that's, highly likely, but that might be 10 years away.
good point.
Yeah.
So once again, going back to what I mentioned in the past hour, one of the things that I've noticed looking through the work that we've done, the highest impact work that we've done, we're better geared for the applied research than the basic research. Once again, not saying we shouldn't be doing it, but producing solutions is taking what's out there and then coming up with some way of applying it to an Army problem. And that's applied research. So we may not have the capability that the team, this number of people, the equipment to do all the basic research and keep up with AFRL or any of the academics or anything like that. But what we do excel at and what we should be the leader in is applying all that knowledge to the Army solution.
Basic research keeps us relevant too. We're constantly, pushing what's known. We're gaining experience in the newest technologies, and I think that allows us to then apply them in ways that our customers need.
So in order for us to do basic research in SynBio, we can't do the same kind of things that ARL and AFRL are doing. And honestly, they look at the partnerships they have, right? ARL is associated with UT, okay? So they have a core facility that they can pull from, and we can't. So we have to have partnerships if we're gonna do those kinds of things. We can't do proteomics here. Do we have people who could do it? Yeah, they don't have the time or the equipment to do it. So I think that just goes back to the fact that partnerships are necessary because there are pieces that we just can't do all in-house that other labs can do because they aren't actually doing them all in-house, right? They have partners as well. They make it sound like they're doing them all in-house, but they're not.
And the 5% rule with 6-1s hinders those partnerships.
Yep.
Makes it impossible.
Yeah, I just, I think, I mean, I didn't pay really close attention to their presentations yesterday because there were no pictures of birds or trees or anything, but, they came and gave us a best case that, sort of like their,
Sales pitch.
pie in the sky kind of thing. And if I were them and I was coming to a competing lab, I'd want to make my lab look really good and try and intimidate the other guys as well. So I don't know, we kind of get this sort of like pie in the sky, rosy picture of everything they're doing. But I bet if we sat down with their researchers like we are today, we'd find that things really weren't quite so awesome. And then if we talked to the people that are funding them and looked at the products of all that great research that they're doing, that might not be so awesome as well. So I don't think we should be too intimidated. But at the same time, I agree that if, there's no point in trying to do the same things that they're doing. We need to find that unique niche, especially for basic research. And then maybe working with them in a unique niche for, the 6.2, 6.3, 6.4 kind of stuff as well. But there's no point in directly competing with them for the things that they're already doing. Unless we find out that they're really, really bad at it.
I didn't know that Jimmy has like 2 million natures in science all over the place, so.
Yeah. Papers are one thing.
Yeah. Sounds pretty good to me.
Anyone else? Well, that's pretty much all we have. So we had a discussion about definitions, and we talked about all the different definitions, and then we decided that the only definition of SynBio that matters is the one that the Army tells us that it is. And so then we had a discussion about how SynBio fits in with the other biotechnologies, and someone said, well, let's find a distinction between genetic engineering and bioengineering and synthetic biology. And so I thought about this last night, and I guess biotechnology is the big umbrella. Agriculture, fisheries, medicine, Tylenol that comes from willow trees, that all fits under biotechnology. And then under that umbrella, you have genetic engineering and bioengineering. And so I likened it to a car. So genetic engineering, if you had a car and you wanted to switch out a part, so if you had a Chevy and you wanted to put a Ford engine in there, just, car enthusiasts just ignore how that doesn't work. But that's what you do. You're taking one thing from one organism and putting it into another. So bioengineering is, I'm going to insult bioengineers here for lack of a better analogy, but if you took the engine out and then you put a hamster on a wheel in there, it still gets you where you're going, but it may not get there quite as fast. And so synthetic biology kind of pulls from both of these. So if you think of it as you're going to make a custom street rod. So you start with a chassis. Say you take a 41 Ford, you've got a chassis, and then you're going to start putting things on it. Well, you can't get all of the parts that were made originally for that car. You might be able to go to the junkyard and find a few pieces that fit here. You're going to have to take some stuff from a bunch of different cars and put them on there. They may not fit quite right. You may have to weld and cut and do that here. With synthetic biology, if you decide you want to put an aircraft engine in there, you can. Or if you want to have it fly, the sky's really the limit. You can make, if you find the right fabrication shop, you can put whatever you want in there. And so I think it's really the evolution of genetic engineering and bioengineering aspects is what synthetic biology is. It's building a machine that's totally biological. And it may not exist in nature, and where it doesn't, then that's the pieces that are made in the lab. So just, I tried my best to hit that. Thanks.
So we're number 3, group number 3. And that was our title up there. We only have one slide. So to stretch it out, I made it all bulletized and animated so as we go through this. But I also had a couple comments here that I wrote down as Kurt was talking, as Ryan was talking. So I wanted to go through this because a lot of the communication is what has to be represented in the final document as much as what we write on the slides here too. So the first thing is I want to stress that this is this is a unique opportunity, I think, and I think we have to recognize that this room can define synthetic biology and what we need and where it's going, aside from TDs over there or branch chiefs or whatever. We can do that here, and we should take this opportunity seriously about what ERDIC synthetic biology is, what we can do, what will we do, and how we will coagulate to form an ERDIC synthetic biology community. Second, I don't know if this doesn't follow anything. It's just a question I had. Is there ever a time where it truly matters if your project is SynBio or not? And if we propose a project, does it matter if it's SynBio? You know, unless the call specifically asks for SynBio, does it really matter? Right now, I don't know that it does. Third question I had here, and I was wondering about this, is synthetic biology a hammer looking for a nail right now? We have to be cognizant of that and be careful, I think. I know when we first started this thing, we were wondering about if Group 1 was going to do sensors, and Group 2 was going to be coatings, and Group 3 was going to be, human performance, or something like that, divided up into kind of like capabilities like that. But we opted not to do that because I think we need this foundational discussion before we figure out what are our big ideas and how we're going to formulate those and put those together. So just want to let you folks know that we did wonder about that. And in the slides I sent out to, or Brandon sent out, there was a Group 5, if we had enough people, that was going to cover like the next big ideas. So Kurt, I think you're the one who put it up on the slide there about, what are the big ideas and the next concepts. And just know that I didn't ask my group to come up with those kind of things. I thought those would formulate after we decide what our community is going to be. And then as I listen to the discussions, are we just going to merely be the test bed? There's design, build, test, and learn. I don't necessarily think that we should just resign ourselves to just being the test bed or satisfying the test loop. But by the same token, this document, I think we should decide, and Carl hit on this too, what do we need? What are we going to ask for in this document? Are we going to say we need 20 million year one to replicate a foundry, and then we need 10 million, 10 million, 6 million, 4 million. We need that tailing to truly be synthetic biology a powerhouse, right? That's what we need. Do we start there and know that we're going to get, is it like a negotiation where we start there and know they're not going to give us that and here's what we're going to give you? So I think we have to have, maybe think about, what we really want to be and what it will cost and why we want to be that. And then what would we accept when they don't give us that? So, and then if we say, we're never going to be design people, right? I don't know. Then we should say, okay, design is going to be ARL, it's going to be whoever else does it, MIT, AFRL. And know that on every SynBio project there's a tax right on top. We need $50K for the design phase at AFRL. So they have to be aware of that. That will be the tax on top of every true SynBio project. One thing I didn't see here is a possibility, and maybe it is kind of embedded in this thing, but we talk about all these, and I think it is kind of embedded in what you're talking about. But one thing I wonder about was, we can look at all these cool technologies and solutions. What if we, instead of looking at those cool solutions, what if we looked at countermeasures to those cool solutions, right? So how do we negate what that thing did, or how do we negate when it gets out, or maybe that could be a potential project as well. How do we defeat those those gene drives or those synthetic organisms. I didn't necessarily see that. I saw how do we use it, but not necessarily how do we defeat it. Okay, this is a weird idea. I don't know. You might actually call this a stupid idea. I wondered about proposals. I wonder if there was ever a way that we could write a proposal that had a two-pronged approach. An engineering approach that we're 90% sure that might work, and a SynBio approach that goes along with it. So every proposal has both a non-synthetic bio and a synthetic bio. So Kurt, you put in a proposal and you know that putting tin in the coating is going to kill organisms, but you also propose a SynBio approach. So that's one way you can kind of wedge us into the SynBio community by getting, I don't know if a proposal forced the issue. I know it increased the cost, but maybe that's another way that we could kind of get SynBio processes and ideas into the research realm, funded realm. Okay. Oh, and I think, Ann, I think you mentioned this, and I was wondering about this too. And this is going to be fodder for argument, so we'll see. Do we really do 6.1 research in synthetic biology? Or do our 6.1 concepts in SynBio, are they actually just new uses of SynBio or something, right? What's the true definition of basic research in SynBio? I don't have a problem with our 6.1s that use it but are we really doing basic research in SynBio? That's a question I pose. Okay, on with my one slide. Okay, we came up with a definition, of course, but I honestly don't know if we could ever improve on the two-word definition of reprogramming life or something, right? It just seems so simple, easy, but our definition was changing the capability of a cell or its genetic structure to have a different function. So all of these things we talk about in our portfolio, I think is a good idea if we discuss in each of those types of projects that Kurt mentioned, if we also put up there why it falls under the SynBio category. What part of this project makes it SynBio? So we looked at different possible funding streams. And 6.1, yes, we know that. But 6.2, that was an interesting concept of taking, say, ARL South 6.1, or even our 6.1, and making a 6.2 out of it. And Alan's not in the room, but maybe you folks from other laboratories, the whole 6.2 process, I don't know what that was. I don't know what happened there. I think that you guys down here could submit 6.2 ideas on your own. We had to go through a very narrow filter, and I think one came out and went forward. So could we together write a 6.2 program, maybe go through your guys' lab down here rather than our lab, that carries forward 6.1 concepts from ARL South and in our own 6.1 and put that together as a 6.2. And it can't be something like, 6.2 project SynBio. It probably has to have like new coatings, new bio-enabled coatings, or something. It has to have that bio in the thing there. Or it won't go forward. But I wonder if that would be a good 6.2 concept for next one. And I don't even know when they come out again.
2022.
2022? Oh, so we have time to put that together. Oh, brother. Okay. But those 6.2 programs, they're big dollars now, right? It's like fewer of them, but bigger dollars. So that might be an option. And one action item, we like the DTRA possibility. I think DTRA is willing to entertain these types of more basic, more risky research. But we also thought that, our team also thought that DTRA has a community that they like. and it may be a little harder to get into that community. So what we suggested was to look at DTRA statements of need and look at their current portfolios of performers, and possibly see if there are folks that we could collaborate with, or see who is already out there who typically get funding and the types of things they get funding for in the synthetic bio arena, so that we could possibly contact them for collaboration or leveraging. So that would be like, we came up with a couple like action items that we wanted to do too. So, and that would be one thing that we propose to do. FIF and UFR lists. We really like the idea of these FIFs. The facilities, equipment, I think there's even one for research, right? Research seed, like small seeds, right? We like that idea. But I think that we don't want to put the cart before the horse here. I think we need to establish our community first, decide who's doing what, how we are arranged, before we know and be able to try to acquire new capabilities and new equipment. I'm wondering what group number 4 comes up with, whether we're all one big ERDIC community. I don't know why I'm pointing. Oh, Fiona. Are we all one big community, or do we have like 4 or 5 little SynBio foundries? Because, as you know, I think I mentioned this yesterday, if we all asking for the same piece of equipment because we all want to build our internal capacity, I can see that is a negative already. But if we had a corporate structure here where we know that, you know, Fiona wants to be in the design phase and Kurt wants to be in the, I should go to a different lab. And Allison wants to go in the build phase and we want to be in the test, and ITL, we could cleverly or build capacity. So we don't necessarily want to do that right now, but we're definitely, I think that's an excellent opportunity. But one FIF that we think could go in sooner, I think. Carrie, do you want to talk about this concept?
So one of the things where we're kind of behind in and even meeting Army regulations is having a biosafety committee for ERDIC. Now, if you actually read the regulations, if we're making any recombinant DNA constructs, that needs to be submitted to a biosafety committee or to NIH if we don't have a biosafety committee. And I know that's not getting done. So if we want people to partner with us, we have to show that we're at least meeting our own standards. And it's always better to go through and establish your safety plan before you do the work, so that if something happens, we can at least say, oh, well, we had a plan, and this is where this should have been in the plan, or, you know, we couldn't anticipate that, you know, power completely went out and these organisms escaped. I mean, you want to have a plan before you start the work. And I know Carrie mentioned that as part of the 6-1s include a safety plan. As far as I know from talking with our safety office here, those safety plans don't get submitted to them. They literally have no idea what we're working on. So that is something that I think we need to address, and that we need to address it for SynBio, but it also helps out with some of our other business areas as well.
Do you want to say that little anecdote that you had about lost funding?
When we had the previous SynBio focus area, we were trying to get someone from MIT to collaborate with us, and he stopped returning phone calls when he found out that we don't have a bioethics. Now, he is very, very big on bioethics. He has written several articles. But if we want the people that are doing this work to partner with us, we've at least got to be meeting them on their own terms.
Thanks. So this would be one that would, an easy FIF, well, pending if we get management to buy into establishing a synthetic biology community. This would be an easy one that goes across, that pertains to all of us, and it would be good for every laboratory. Now, the second FIF that we thought about, I can't remember who brought it up, but we thought there should be an FIF training pool, and we wondered about, you know, for instance, the way I envision is like there's a really great microscope at Corel, for instance, and maybe there's a team of people, like one from EL, one from Searle, one from GSL, whatever. That pool of people goes to Corel, for instance, and learns all about that microscope. First, they'd learn that capability. They'd learn, you know, what is available to them to use in the synthetic biology arena. They could go up there and they'd be trained on it so they could use it for their project or collaborate with the, you know, the Corel person who owns that. But we like the idea of having a multi-lab team go from possibly place to place to learn equipment's capabilities, you know, techniques that they could import into projects as well. So we thought that that might be a good idea. And then Brandon brought this up earlier. I tell you the truth, when I see those things, I press delete. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know what those things are. But I guess there's training involved in these CP16 or CP18s. We can have instructors come in, or we can go train. And, oh, Carrie, did you want to mention this? Because you're the one who brought this up. That was a good idea.
Well, we kind of talked about it already. It does have to be pretty formalized, but I think if we had time and like a lead out, and we could sort of formalize the process. But I'm not sure how that happens. Katie Boyd in our group actually went through this to get some R training, and a few other people have done that. But those are more formalized. So it would take some effort, but it's possible.
But I think I also agree with Michael in saying that to expect a professor to come up with a course just so we can put it in on our paperwork, it probably won't work very well. So we have to figure out how to do this. Okay. So I want to go back to Alan. You said that if we asked for training, you'd say no. What would you need to see from us to say yes on perhaps helping fund this FIF for a traveling training pool of people?
So basically a plan, right? And I'm starting to see more of a plan coming out, right? Because 3 people are going to want training. We'll only be able to fund 1 or 2. So how do we pick one or the other? We do it exactly like, for example, 6-1, how do we evaluate proposals? We just compare each one against our criteria, and we say which best addresses it. So the advantage you guys have, instead of an individual coming in and wanting training, is that a collective group, you make an argument. We've modernized in the Army and changed the way we're going. It's completely changed 100% of the programs we're working on. But the good news is synthetic biology has been identified by both DOD and Army as an area they want to invest in. We've got core competencies in this area, but we are lacking specific sets of skills that prevent us from moving forwards. How can I turn you down at that point? And it's not one person, it's a group of, I don't know, what we got, 30 people in here representing 4 labs, right? Now, if I'm a branch chief, like you were, I potentially could use some of my own for those people that are in my group. But better than that, I could get with 3 other branch chiefs, and we could float that up and argue this should be funded as part of a FIF. But better than a training FIF, why don't we ask for something a little bigger? Because we've got to have that training. You say even if we trained them, they can't do any work because we don't have any way to get their plans approved, right?
Technically, we can submit to NIH. I don't know that anyone has
done that or that there's a vehicle for it.
You just want to communicate. I heard you clearly. It's going to shut down work. That's what I heard, right? Just
Yeah.
cut it off there, right? We're
Yes.
simple creatures in management. Short phrases. That's what I can remember, right? And then maybe in something along the lines, out of all these lists that Kurt and different people put up of what you're doing, maybe part of that fifth is a little bit of maturation, so we can get one product farther down that chain, right? That positions us either to be the field evaluators or foot in the door with the first customer, right? That bigger package would make it even easier to get that training part done because it's part of a broader vision, right? That's my answer.
Oh, don't worry, I'm not discounting the idea of a bigger FIF,
Yep.
but I thought this
then-
is kind of foundational.
The fifth is the first thing on there, right? You know, they're gonna come up with, what do we need for the next things we should work on in 6-1? Now, what did I say about management? We're simple creatures that need direction. You ought to be seeding us. ERDIC's already bought off on. We need to be in this area. They're making investments in this area. Here is a core competency, capability, tool or something, right? And we don't know exactly what it is. We're going to identify it in the 6-1. Move on down to the 6-2 then, right? What are we in management? Simple creatures that need some direction, right? Something's going to be killed in the 6-2, 6-3 program. That's what AFC does. That's how they know they're accomplishing something. Sorry about that, I didn't say. You guys need to collectively submit something in there, right? There's going to be calls for maturation technologies, which is the 6-4. What do we have that's come out of ERDIC or that we can steal from a university because they'll convince that it's tech transfer to us, that we could potentially position ourselves and start doing something a little bit more in the maturation end of things? Now, I heard some contradictory things too. So I heard, originally I thought we'd be really good in the design phase. Now this could just be my ignorance. But then I heard, no, maybe design phase in. So when I heard the computational, you know, we have all these computational abilities and stuff, I took that to mean that maybe there's a niche for us in the design phase. Again, it could be my ignorance. But I would continue to pursue down that line too as to where we can differentiate ourselves so a simple person like me can say, that makes more sense to go in there instead of sort of shotgunning across. Sorry for a long answer.
Okay. And then our, one other thing, we thought DARPA was a waste of time. I tell you the truth, you know, it seems like DARPA, they already know the big picture things they want to do, and they already have the SynBio community that they want to work with. And that's the people who are already ahead of us. And I didn't necessarily like some of the answers I heard from the panel. No matter what they say, they're millions of dollars ahead of us and years ahead of us. And those are the people who are going to get these DARPA-type projects. Now, the IVNV is okay, and I think some folks in here do that, and I think Ed's proposing some of that for DARPA as well. But I don't know how much it pushes our capabilities forward or pushes our bona fides, it builds our bona fides. So I just don't know about that. So that was our opinion, that if we have this document, where are we going to go? I didn't know if I wanted to go knock on DARPA's door. It's just an opinion of our group. Non-traditional funding sources. I think we came up with the idea that, well, we did come up with the idea that we need the TD office to better describe reimbursable opportunities. Yes?
I have a comment about the NIFA, because
Oh.
I've submitted a proposal there.
Oop.
So NIFA and other government agencies cut the overhead rate, they cap it at 30%. Some of them may be less. And so NIFA proposals are 40 pages. They're you think our paperwork's bad, USDA is apparently worse. It takes a lot of time to put those together. And so what I was told was, go ahead, submit the proposal, and if you get funding, then go to the director and ask for a waiver. Because if you ask for a waiver before, you're not going to get it. So you're flipping a coin. You're putting a lot of effort in, and they may come back and say no, in which case you've just wasted a lot of time. So we need some sort of a policy, 30% of something is better than 0% of anything. And so we need an adjustment.
Sometimes. Carrie, do you want to answer, you want to address something that Ryan just said there?
Yeah. So I too have submitted a NIFA, and I did it with both the FDA as well as here, and same problem, but last year I was going to submit something and chose not to because they didn't have a 2-pager. They didn't have a quick white paper response, and I didn't want to go through the hassle and then be shot down, and time got away from me. So we didn't do it anyway. But I did go and I talked with Brandon, and I went up and talked with some other people and up the chain toward Jack's office, and was told that because of our climate last year, previous fiscal year actually, it would most likely be not a problem whatsoever to waive all of EL's overhead, because they were looking so forward to getting external funding. That would likely not be an issue. Of course, I would want that in writing.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, for some of the big dollar projects that are available through NIFA, I would have a hard time believing that our labs wouldn't figure out a way. And in a previous one that we did write, about 5 years ago or more, they did meet us. The EL and ERDIC did meet us at that rate. But we also switched it around so that you always have to have an academic partner for USDA to even look at you. And we had the academic partner, quote unquote, lead it so that our rates didn't come across as bad. But you do need an academic partner, so you do have to be crafty and sensitive to what the USDA's or these other funding agencies are even going to look at, because they don't want to fund other government agencies generally. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. But the point there is that we get management to buy into flexible overhead rates before we put in the effort. And if we have our synthetic bio business plan and they commit to helping us do these kind of things, that's the kind of thing that we should eliminate that coin, okay? But that was just an idea. Now, I've never heard of this. Maybe I have from you, Ryan, but I didn't realize it was called this. But this is just an example. We didn't know if the TD had other opportunities that are out there. I don't know if, districts or something. I know they're product driven, but I don't know if there are other opportunities out here that we just don't know. And then civil works. I think Kurt and Ryan brought this up, but we have no idea I don't have any idea, I should say, about what's required or how do we even get into the civil works and how we put together a proposal in those kind of areas. But that would be a possibility as well. And that's where I thought, we have, like the Man versus Bear new TV show or something. We have engineering versus bio proposals. I don't know. So anyways, I think we need to have better ideas of where else we could go with these kind of ideas. As it came up, we still did. I know this is someone else's. We're giving a thumbs up to the COP, by the way. So we like the idea of a periodic working group coming together to discuss plans, directions, and outcomes. So. And one of the things that we really liked was yesterday's Ed's Top 10, and I keep wondering if that could be a way. I don't even know if we divide and conquer that Top 10 list, but I know that we could probably have a group of 3 people in each of those 10 areas, and they could mix and match, discussing each of those 10 and what concepts we could bring to bear in the synthetic biology arena to address those top 10. But so those are the top 10, I get that. But how do they get funded is what I don't know. Where do we go if we have a great idea for number 1? Where does it go? Is that Ed's role? I don't know. Where do we go with that? Or is it just, we have to find our own funding and we say, oh yeah, we address number one? I don't know.
I think that was part of, what they were showing was part of the plan that Futures Command is coming with. So they're developing some sort of roadmap or strategic plan for SynBio. I think that's what it was. So there might be funding later on.
Okay.
I don't think it's finished for what they were showing. Yeah.
So they would actually attach funding to each of the, possibly to those 10 areas?
Maybe.
Well, that would be a good thing to know and be prepared for, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think anybody knows anything right now with Futures Command.
Okay. And I know we talked about it a little bit, but in our group, but who at Army Futures Command can we talk to? I mean, we know that there are some people who are, had details there, and there's currently one person there, but do we approach those folks? You know, I think it was Will, I think it was Amy, and I think it was Sandy, were the three people we identified. Is part of our action to talk to those three and see what we could be doing here? Or how do we get funding in that, in these areas perhaps? So I didn't know if that was something we should do. And finally, the CFT, what we'd like to do is, you know, we have those 6, 7 CFTs. I honestly don't know what they're currently doing. What are the research that these CFTs are doing? So what's their current portfolio? What are their current problems? So that's another area that it's always out there someplace, and we always kind of know, oh, we should be aiming at those CFTs and their problems. But I don't know their problems. I don't know who to talk to. Is there something that we could do so that for every one of those, like soldier lethality comes in and they give a presentation on, here's the type of things that we do, and if you want funding from us, you got to hit our gaps right here. Here are our gaps. And then we say, oh yeah, we have an idea. And they say, oh, here's how you get funding for that. So that's the kind of thing that I think that we would really love to know. What are the problems out there that we need to solve? So one thing I'm wondering about, Brandon and Alan, or whoever else might know, how do we get, I don't know, how do we get our hooks into the CFTs, I guess? Okay. Yes.
I'm not the ERDIC CFT expert, but I can tell you what I know. And from my experience with a previous deep dive with the network CFT, where not a lot, but some of ERDIC's portfolio fits inside that. My editorial comment about that is I'm not sure how much longer our 6.1, 6.2, 6.3 investments are going to go towards those CFTs. The CFTs have a specific date by which they are all supposed to deliver a thing, a network, a future vertical lift, right? That's an actual helicopter, a thing that they have to transition out. And at some point, again, this is my editorial comment, right? This is not the official ERDIC position or anything like that. But from where I sit, at some point in the relatively near future, they won't have a need for basic or basic applied 6.1, 6.2, 6.3 research towards the next helicopter or, cannon or whatever they're developing, because those things are going to be towards production pipelines and not towards tweak the ballistics or something like that. So
when do those end and new ones begin?
from where I sit, I don't know that there's an answer to that yet. I don't know that that AFC has a specific answer to that. I do think, again, I would say this a lot, this caveat, this is my opinion, not official stuff. But the topics that you heard Ed talk about, that came out of, he said this, but to give it a little more context, that came out of a workshop at AFC. That workshop was attended by only Army senior scientists. So Army STs, that was their workshop with Kim Sablon. And from the outside looking in, that looks to me a lot like the people at AFC starting to think about that. What's next? What are the things that we're going to start putting R&D dollars behind? Now, you know, what year that is in the POM and all that kind of stuff, that I don't know those answers. Maybe Alan knows more about that. I'm sure he knows more about than I do. But I think in the information vacuum that, as you know, PIs and branch chiefs and you know, the bottom of our organization has been working through, CFTs are these big things that are making a lot of decisions and are taking money and pulling money and putting money in other places. I'm just not so sure that those CFTs are the places, when we're thinking about synthetic biology R&D investments for ERDIC, that those will be the places and the people that we need to work on marketing this to as a first step. That's my thought. Yeah.
Sure, I'll say something. I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said. I'd simplify it down though, okay? So I would just put AFC, ASALT, right? Because they're both kind of involved in the whole thing. They got people that are involved in there. And there is a component of AFC that is more future looking. That may be the area here. But the key thing I think is if you can translate your broader plan into, is this something we can do in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years, that tells you who to talk to, which I think is the point you're getting to. Either way, whether it's the CFT, whether it's AFC, or in ASALT, if you kind of give the general idea of what time frame these solutions could potentially come out, we got people that can make those connections in there. So if it's within AFC, it's Sandy. Yeah, I still remember the old name. If it is at the CFT, if it's more shorter term horizons, there's SES leads for each one of those. There's TD leads for each one of those. And we somewhat have some liaisons temporarily buried in some of them. So the part I would concentrate on your end in there is what's the what kind of thing could be done and what's the timeline? Then you can start to have a gauge with our connections into it, and they can set up the next step down. That's what I think is the way forward. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I just feel like my comment still remains that I feel, I don't know about other folks in here, I feel very disconnected from the CFT and what they want and who they are, all right? So I still would love to hear what they consider a problem, because I still think that could drive things that we think about, even if they don't exist anymore, right? Okay. Last line of the last slide. We wondered about, and again, I hope this isn't from number 4, but we thought about this, and man, we think that it would be really nice to have an ERDIC SynBio course. How do we set that up, right? And I think it's really just like any kind of academic course where you start, you know, very simple and you go to more and more complex ideas here. Because I think a lot of folks here could probably be interested in SynBio, but everybody, you know, everyone's not sure. Oh, I wish we knew more, and it sounds really interesting. How do we engage these people? So I think that, you know, we could imagine setting up a course, and maybe some of the monthly courses are internal people, right? We have internal capabilities. So maybe one person does, you know, the introduction to cell biology or something. I don't know. That's a whole course in and of itself, I know. And then every month you have something a little different. It could be a capability. It could be, you know, a piece of instrumentation. But we could invite people in. And I'm thinking more online, right? You dial in, and maybe a professor calls in and they give, you know, the next class. We could even imagine taking things from Jove, which, you know, can show techniques and stuff. Maybe that could be a course or a class. And there's LabTube and YouTube. So I think that our team was excited about the idea of starting at the ground level, learning about SynBio, building up, and perhaps that would be one way that we could build internal core capabilities. So I think that,
I was going to say, like a journal club is another way to try to get to that point. You know, paper comes out, it's got something that is valuable.
I agree, but I feel like there's a lot of people here that's going to be out here, and they want to start here. So how do we get them up to here so they can engage into the journal club? So, you know, you take a look at the ACS synthetic biology, right? And so you look at the title and you think, oh, I get it. I kind of get what they're doing. It's kind of cool. But everything else after that, that's all your guys' stuff. I don't know. Right? So that's the last thing I have. I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments. Nope? Okay. All right, so at this point in time, I think that I'd like to present an award that everybody's looking forward to. Because I have to leave right after this, I have to go. So before I do that, so let me thank Brandon for putting all this together. We appreciate you being the central hub of this. Thank you. And he is still accepting donations back there, I think. Yes. Thanks, Alan, for coming. You are our TD representative. Other TDs are not here, right? Am I right about that? No one else is here, right?
Yeah, Kevin was here from ITL for a little bit today. So he was the lone rep.
Are we worried about that, or are we okay with that?
I think we have engagement from TDs in multiple labs. We had some unfortunate conflicts with timing, but I think we have engagement. So I'm not concerned.
Okay, because what we come up with has to go forward, right? And if they aren't even here, okay. So with that, a panel of people got together. Sorry, let me get the, yeah, there we go. This does not represent endorsement again. So the panel got together, they talked to me last night, and they said, you know, there were a lot of people, a lot of names came up, right? And so we had our 3 criteria up there. And one person seemed to stand out. So not to say that no one else, you know, everybody had creativity and collaboration, yeah, it was great. But one person kind of came across as being high in all the levels. And so I'd like to present the first annual one to Carrie. And we have, oh, Carl, see, Carl wasn't even here. So you didn't even know. You didn't even know the competition.
There's a variable missing.
Where's the conditioner? I got a question.
Before drinking, those are the instructions.
Yeah, shake it up.
And then shake before.
Did you want to speak to the audience here at all? You know, just like. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
I had a question for you, Don. Because you're old enough that you remember.
Wise. I think they say wise now.
I had a question because you're old enough and you remember.
Okay.
How can, we've gone through exercises like this before with the CDR and biotechnology.
Yeah, I
And
remember
we-
that one.
And we actually drilled down pretty good in terms of, hey, this is the equipment we need, these are the capabilities we need. We identified all kinds of things, and we created these documents. So I guess it was about, 6, 7 years ago, maybe? And there was some follow-up business area developments and stuff. And I guess I look back on that and I think, what was the impact of all that? I mean, I think at the time when we were making those documents, we were writing 6.1s, we were pushing that same information through the 6.2 pipelines and the 6.1 pipelines. But I mean, I looked at this document recently.
Oh, you
and-
did? Oh.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I might have forwarded it to Brandon. And I mean, and it has, you could see in that document some of the same things we're doing today. And, getting back to this idea of we're dealing with the new technology, the ology aspect. And I kind of see us, all of us in this room, we're clinging to this raft of synthetic biology, and we're floating, sort of aimlessly in this body of water. So, and where do we want to take this? And what can we learn from what we did in the past? We generate these nice documents. They seem to have a half-life and get stale very quickly. Your thoughts on that perspective?
Yeah, thanks. It's interesting you looked at that, because I haven't looked at that in, would you say 6 or 7 years? So one thing is that's an excellent idea. I wonder if that's a document we can pass forward to Brandon so he could see the type of stuff that went in there, especially if we're trying to replicate info. That would be really nice to put that in, because we spent a lot of time on that. And I don't know where it went. I kind of felt like I was really excited about it because it looked like it had a lot of buy-in when we first started it. And then suddenly that fell off exponentially. And then so by the end, you didn't even want to see it again. And I don't know where it went. I honestly don't know. I don't know if it went in competition with other CDRs and it was not selected. It'd be interesting to see what was selected that year instead of this one. Because it seemed like that was, like you said, that was the new ology that we were trying to push, and it didn't get selected. What did? And why didn't it? So we know the people who worked on that. I wonder if we should talk to those people and see why that didn't go forward.
Well, it had a lot of details. It had equipment, it had people, it had everything. And, I just don't know if in our environment, we get busy and all of a sudden we start hitting deadlines and things start happening, and carrying these types of efforts, if they become unfunded or lose their inertia.
Well, the other thing, though, that I'm seeing here that I didn't see in that, this seems like we might be, and I think maybe that's the difference, we might have to be a more active community. We're not just putting a document and then done. We probably need action items, we need the COP, we need the class, we need to continue carrying forward, because if it looks like we lose interest, if this room loses interest, they're going to lose interest for sure. So.
Well, in a lot of ways, that sounds like a failure.
Yeah.
So how, what are the lessons learned from it?
All right. And I don't know. I don't know. But we know who to ask. We do know who to ask. Alan? No.
I'll give you my impression.
Okay.
Being wise like you, Don,
Yeah.
which we've had a number of years in, so I may not remember exactly. I think the key part that was missing out of that, besides the whole group having a common vision together, I think it was return on investment. I think that was the weakest part of that whole effort. And if you think of every decision that's made within ERDIC, every funding agency that does it, the bottom line comes down to return on investment. So the one lesson I'd take out of that is, it may be important to understand all the training that's required, all the facilities, the equipment and stuff that we need. The emphasis on additional funding sources, right, that make this whole thing worthwhile, I think is what moves it forwards. That's my impression.
So it didn't go forward because we left off 1-0.
Believe 1-0.
All right, well, that's all I had. I have to go, so thanks everybody for, I'm going to miss number 4.
As the soil scientist that's organizing the synthetic biology workshop, I wasn't involved in the biotechnology CDR, but I will say this workshop didn't happen because I was the proponent for it, right? I wasn't out arguing that we needed to do a synthetic biology workshop. No disrespect to the synthetic biologists. This happened because there are ERDIC lab directors that are interested in this topic, right? So you gotta, I'm from Texas. You gotta make hay while the sun shines, right? This is the time, the sun's shining. So if this group can get organized and put a plan in front of these directors and in front of the TDs that work for these directors that are also interested in this area, I think there's some opportunity there. So.
Brandon, why are they interested in this? Is it because they're seeing something above, or are they truly interested in this?
I think they see other people doing this, and I think they are hearing from some of their peers and some people like Ed Perkins that have opportunity to get some face time with them, the importance of this area. That's what I think. But I haven't had a lot of conversations with any of them other than Dr. Adegazel in EL. But I know Dr. Adegazel is interested in this technology and in the promise of this technology. And so he is a proponent for it in the board of directors. I can speak to that. So.
Well, I'm sorry Don's got to leave right now because, yeah, he stole a little. I guess everybody's stolen a little bit of our thunder, seeing as we're last. But it is a good. It's good to see that everybody has, similar ideas. So that's great. We're getting sort of a consensus within the group. So we're looking at the infrastructure. Do we have the personnel and the facilities necessary to do the research that we're interested in synthetic biology? And in a nutshell, we all have complementary equipment. Yes, we all are pretty decently equipped within the labs, whether we got, capabilities to work with prokaryotes or eukaryotes, and that the eukaryotes includes, things like yeast, fungi, fish, plants, that kind of work is going on with transgenic organisms, cell lines from Kerry, things like that. And I don't think anybody is interested terribly in going, too far beyond that list. Pretty much, we've got really good analytical equipment. It is spread amongst all the labs, and some teams have more than others. And so, we're not advocating at this point that everybody should have duplicate equipment unless it's, absolutely necessary, for, carrying out your experiments. We've also looked at GSL, even though we don't really have anybody representative from here at this time from GSL. We feel that they're more going to be helping us with the materials characterization. If we go forward, if anybody has, any kind of bio-enabled material like the BioBrick, things like that they can help us analyze that, the spectral properties. They have, various microscopes and equipment that can measure that. The SEM is here. I guess Krell has an SEM as well. Then ITL was identified as being, the high power computing facility, because we all know we have large databases that need mining. We need, genetic and proteomic material to be put together. We need to manage the LIMS database. In our discussions with Kevin, he mentioned that, they're not going to have, or they will not hire a biologist within their facility to do this. So we're going to have to sort of help somebody within ITL understand what it is that we're going to be needing in the future. We were unclear as to what GSL has in terms of its capabilities for people and equipment. And CHL probably would more likely be, at the demonstration phase, the proving the technology works. partly because I'm not really aware of anything that anybody's interested in SynBio, like actually at the 6.1, 6.2 level. Our gaps, which have been mentioned, the high throughput screening, we certainly lack that biofoundry capability. And the large scale biomanufacturing, I mean, we do have, small scale equipment, so we would need to partner there. It's been brought up about, training ourselves and then also hiring. Okay? So are there any comments on this particular slide? Yes.
Can I just ask a question? Can you elaborate on ITL's role again? Sorry, because the only reason I ask is because when we do model building and design and data analysis in particular, sometimes we use ITL assets, but ITL assets are used by ITL and they're under, there's great computing resources, but then you sit in a queue forever. It's hard to utilize them, and we certainly don't get priority for that. So perhaps one thing we need to do is either convince them to get additional resources, or we need to build our own capability, have our own clusters specifically for these types of tasks that they can help manage, because there is need to have people service the machines, keep them updated and run. But in our experience, using ITL's computational facilities has some downsides. They look great on paper, but then everybody's using them, and it's when you need to get stuff done, we have to look for alternative means.
Right. Michael Rowland brought that up as well because of his experience, and we also did have some discussions with Kevin from ITL about that, and we'll get into that a little bit more in one of the other slides, and I'll let Michael add in his thoughts right now.
So in this particular side, what we were considering with ITL is not only just using ITL's equipment, which we currently have access to, but as you said, and as I've pointed out before, it's relatively limited. We don't have access to the urgent queues in order to get all the nodes that we need. But instead, also working with ITL PIs and technicians to get sort of into that the ITL facility has. So we can expand our computational and modeling and informatics capabilities by training ITL folks who have the technical know-how for that on the biological side so that they can understand what we're talking about. And then having that group being able to use their own resources for it.
So if ITL doesn't want to hire a biologist, we have ITL employees at Searle, people switch around.
Right.
They're paid on projects where they're at. Would it make more sense for another lab to hire a biologist who's an expert in information management and have them reside at ITL and interact with all of the computer scientists?
Yeah, we would probably have to, as a group, fund that person, okay? And that, is certainly one possibility, and that would fall within our, request for additional personnel. Yeah, I was kind of surprised at that, too, that, if we're talking about, requiring a full-time person to assist, 3 to 4 labs on this effort, why wouldn't they be interested in hiring, a biologist who could sort of converse with us a little bit more easier than they can, all right? But, as you see, he felt that, we're going to need to spend the time with one of their subject matter experts who would then liaison with somebody else within ITL. So that was his model right now, okay? And we may have to investigate whether or not we need somebody else, okay? We do have, a couple people here that work on bioinformatics as a whole within EL. So whether it would be somebody could be hired onto their team to work with the LIMS databases and some of the other information. Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Brandon.
About that, I'd be interested to hear from the group if there's anybody that is currently working with other, especially Army, but potentially DoD scientists that are interested in high-performance computing for biology, and how they do that. Are they using Army high-performance computing clusters? Do they have their own small clusters? Are they partnering with academics? Does anybody have collaborators that are doing that kind of stuff inside the Army or DoD?
I know some of Searle's contacts work with U of I's supercomputing systems like Blue Waters, but that's more for distributed parallel computing applications.
I mean, for various projects, we purchased things. So for another project, we built a GPU cluster, and we housed that at UC Santa Barbara, and it's Army paid for. Presumably, we could all remote into it and use it. They upkeep it. It's our stuff, but you know, once the project ended, it's like, I think it's still there. You know, and other other times we have academic collaborators in computer science departments, and they use their clusters. That's the experience I have. And then, like Michael said, using the HPC, it's just so resource intensive. You know, that seems to me like if you really need something done, you just got to figure out how to do it yourself. You know, whether it's get a better computer in your office with, 20 cores or whatever.
I guess what I'm curious about is that if we have challenges using the ERDIC high-performance computing clusters, is that a unique ERDIC issue, or is that Army-wide? Are Army high-performance computing clusters being used for things other than this kind of application? I mean, I'm sure they are, surely, but is this kind of application getting better access at other Army clusters? Or DoD clusters, I guess, is probably the best way to ask it. I'm just curious for information.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know either.
This is a larger DoD problem. At the Tri-Services microbiome meeting in October, this came up. And what you see across that community, that DoD community, is people, kind of doing it on site, localized. You see people relying on an external academic partner. There are some examples where some people are using the HPU, the HPCU that they have in I guess in the DC area. But they also mentioned problems with using that, some of the same ones that were described here. And it's really, I think the panel touched on it a little bit yesterday, that this is kind of a DoD problem when it comes to the access to the cloud and sharing these resources, and particularly some of the data when it comes to DoD has got PII in it, and managing all that. So what we're experiencing here is essentially a microcosm of what's happening in the larger community.
Okay. All right. Well, so I guess that's something that we can all move forward on as like an action item for ourselves. All right. So we had the question of which lab should do what. Should each lab have their own niche, or should we become like a single SynBio center and that just has its own function, one function basically. And what we think we should do instead kind of falls along the lines of, formalizing the community of practice and having an overall SynBio team leader or director who can foster collaborations amongst the different teams, and start up with the workshops and webinars, kind of the same kind of idea that Don just mentioned, like have an ERDIC SynBio class. We'll explain that a little bit later, what we came up with. We do feel that we have some overlapping capabilities, but especially at the 6.1, 6.2 effort level, and we just kind of feel like, rather than moving people around, we think we should just start to collaborate a little bit more with each other and sort of try to be one team, one voice kind of idea was brought up. And then sort of basically ITL would maintain its function for its computer expertise and modeling and AI, machine learning, and GSL could leave, basically be the materials characterization. So that was what we kind of came up with. Comments? Okay. All right, we'll move on.
Can I?
Oh, sure.
comment just real quick. Okay, so I'm what you would call a modeler, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm an EL employee. I think it's dangerous to say ITL is only going to do computational modeling and stuff, because those are very subject matter expert specific, right? You have to be familiar, like everybody
Like,
said,
granted,
with
yeah.
biology,
Mhm.
and then you have to have the know-how to develop a model and then run it. And ITL can certainly help with computational modeling and machine learning.
Right, well, I
But-
mean, it's not just your team, there's, Menage's team as well
yeah,
that
but
does
they're not going to be the only experts.
No, they're not. And you guys can only do, so
Yeah.
much, so you would reach out to
think
somebody in
that's-
ITL as well.
I think these categories are better for maybe experimentalists, because it's harder to develop a lab environment. EL might do a little bit of materials characterization, I don't know, but certainly GSL does most of it, and that's not going to change.
Right.
But I mean, to change modeling or machine learning, all you have to do is open a book and read the method. I mean, it doesn't take much to develop a new capability like that. So an EL or Searle or a CREL person can become just as, capable in these, even though ITL has the infrastructure. See what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, yes, but that would be for, say, the person, who is a biologist who doesn't want to learn that, okay? And maybe you don't have the time and resources to help them. Just throwing it out there, okay? All right. Should we be one ERDIC SynBio Center or individual separate labs? At the experimental level, yes, we can maintain ourselves as individual separate labs. We think that there should definitely be a core facility with a pay-for-use format that would help maintain the equipment. And that would be so that we just have one biofoundry, okay, which has the high throughput to do the transformations that we need, to do the picking, the selection, that kind of thing. All right, so we're not all buying the same $500K million piece of equipment. We have one, okay? And and that would basically be located in one location. Everybody could come and use it. If you want to, you could be trained on how to be a super user, so you would be actually responsible for your own time on that machine. You'd have to pay for some of the training on that machine. If you didn't want to, of course, we'd have to have somebody dedicated to be knowledgeable of that machine. We would need some modular lab space at this core facility so that people that from outside of that location, as they come in and they travel to the site, they're able to set up, their experiments that they need prior to being able to use that equipment, okay? And Don suggested that might be 20 million. I had not been thinking quite so high to sort of renovate a room to meet that capability. So definitely that's something, cost-wise would need to be looked into because we are going to need, support from upper management to be able to develop such a facility. And when we discussed amongst our group where should that kind of core facility be housed, everybody seemed to think that, you know, here in Vicksburg was a good location because there are already 3 labs here, and there's a fair amount of basic analytical equipment here. We're not suggesting that we're physically moving, the MALDI-TOF or the AFM microscope or the SEM to another location, but they could stay where they currently are, and it would sort of be multiple locations for certain equipment, but we would just certainly need one location for a lab to do sort of the wet lab work. Okay? Thoughts, comments on that, Michael?
Quick question.
Sure.
In my limited understanding of experimentation,
Mm-hmm.
if you buy a piece of equipment, there's an investment.
Right.
With that. But it's not just a one-time investment in buying the equipment. You also have to upkeep
Right.
the equipment and service plans and whatnot. So when you say, should we buy, where should we have these things? Should we buy them? And you mentioned FIF and PRIP funds.
Mm-hmm.
Is that meant to say, well, there will be recurring costs and these are the types of funds that will cover them? Or are the funds sort of to cover these projects specific?
My understanding is possibly we could use those funds to renovate some space, to purchase some of the initial equipment that we need, okay, that would be used by everybody, all right? After that, running the equipment, maintaining like the service contracts, that kind of thing, that would come out of your pay for use that you would then have to incorporate into your proposals, okay? You would also have to incorporate into your proposals your travel costs to come here, stay here, use the equipment, and do your experiments, okay? So that's, again, where we would need sort of buy-in from the TD's office and upper management, because that's going to slightly increase your cost of your proposals, all right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Natalia Allison has a comment.
I know I was in the group, and I've been kind of thinking about this a little bit with having it as the Vicksburg location. I actually kind of think that each lab could kind of have their own sort of specialties, and especially because, okay, so we're the cold region, so we already kind of have things that are set up in order to do sort of cold region research. And so I feel like the core facility could actually be broader and incorporate all the different capabilities, and then there would be funds, kind of like we were talking before, in order to travel to the different locations. So it wouldn't be just that Vicksburg now becomes where all the new equipment comes into. I think it would be where does that equipment best fit in which location for what the sort of end goal of that
Okay.
usage is.
That's a good point. Okay. All right. Oh, sorry, yep.
To add on to that, I like a lot the idea of having, I don't know, you call it a virtual core center or something like that, that's at all of the interested sites. I think that helps keep people bought in. I think that helps keep management engaged, that their people at their site have, a physical piece of the pie, and people from other labs gives opportunities to go and do work and interact. But that's my 2 cents.
That's a good point. I like what you have said there about fostering collaboration, because you have to go somewhere else to use somebody else's piece of equipment and then also get training. So creating the strong ERDIC community, we're going to agree with earlier comments about formalizing a community of practice, And within that community practice, we would have like workshops maybe once a year that would rotate amongst the various ERDIC labs with not so much the aim of being like an IPR, but more, what have you learned as you are doing research in this area? And what is needed for us to progress forward within this area based on your needs? And then to extend these invitations, you know, toward the broader ERDIC community, and possibly even out to some of the academics and other DoD labs as well. And, you know, getting along the lines of Don's suggestion of an ERDIC SynBio course, we came up with webinars that would be like 1 hour in length. And our idea behind that was so that, you know, Michael says each time he talks to somebody in ITL, he has to explain what his project is, and he has to start with basic biology principles, and it takes time. So if we could have these webinars where we could teach people in ITL and the engineers our basic biological principles and what SynBio is and what we're doing in SynBio, and then at the same point, then reverse it at another time and have somebody from ITL or engineering explain to us, okay, these are our capabilities, this is how we feel, you know, the plug and play of the design, test, build focus might fit in based on our engineering principles, or if you're needing certain models or database management, you know, these are our capabilities within ITL. And then also just sort of fostering that. You know, we could also teach, as Don suggested, to our community, you know, here's how you would do, say, you know, a bacterial transformation or grow phage or, you know, whatever you might need. Here's how you would set up the sequencer so that when you come in, you know, you have a little bit of background. It is what it is that you need to know in order to communicate with somebody else on your team or another team, okay? Any thoughts? Yep.
This is really good for SynBio, but I think this goes beyond just this area. We don't communicate well between labs.
Right.
We need 2 webinar series. We need ERDIC for Dummies, and then we need focused areas. So I would love to hear somebody from ITL explain about their computing capabilities. And I would like to hear some analytical chemistry people talk about some things that I'm not familiar with. And I'm sure, you know, the engineers would love to hear some biology. You know, we don't do a good job. You know, I explain stuff to people in the hallway, but most people, I think we're all like that. Most people, we don't speak the same language when we start
Right,
talking.
yeah. I mean, certainly that's a difficulty that I have had in the past with talking to some of the computational biologists, you know, and then even some of the structural people, you know. This is what I'd like, you know, how do I get there? You know, I mean, I think I've even had difficulties talking to the 2 Michaels here about models. You know, what exactly is it that I want on the bacterial side of my model? What do I want to do? You know, and how can I get there? So, yeah, because I don't speak the same language that they do, all right?
And then amongst our community,
Right.
we can talk a little bit more technical.
Right.
That they wouldn't be interested in.
No, yeah. So they're going to have to be, as Don suggested, some different levels of the training or the webinars, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any thoughts on, you know, we would have this virtual SynBio community. Any thoughts on, do we need like a formal director? Do we need a formal branch chief? You know, a formal team leader, that kind of idea. All right. That's good. All right, and these are our list of group members. So I just want to thank all of them and thank all of you guys too. So it looks like our lunch is here. Oh, you have a comment? Allison has one final comment for us.
I think one thing that maybe so you asked about having like a formal director. I think one thing that we do need to think about is hiring people, one with the expertise. They already have the expertise that they can come in and essentially teach us and elevate us in areas that we're lacking. But then also we need hands to be able to do all this work. And so I think those are areas that we need to think about expanding sort of personnel in order to really become, kind of advance our position in this area.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good point. Michael's got a comment.
Yeah, with the formal director or branch chief or whatever we're going to call it, if we're going to be forming a community of practice, community of interest here, I definitely see the need for someone that would be taking the reins of that and making sure that the enthusiasm of the past couple days isn't going to die out. Because that's how the community is going to die.
Good point. Yeah. We have any volunteers? Michael's volunteered. All right. So yeah, we'll have to canvass. We can't exclude Don. He's not here.
Can't defend himself if he's not here.
That's true. All right. Brandon, we go to break for lunch?
Yeah.
Okay, we're breaking for lunch.
Let me,
Oh, you're going to, a couple things.
This was the last presentation activity, so we'll break for lunch, and then after that, people are free to go, do tours, stay and talk posters and stuff. I think we have the room until, 1:45, 2 o'clock. I wanted to take a couple of seconds. I know I'm standing between everybody and food, so that's the least popular place in the room, but about next steps and kind of what's coming next. We kind of started touching on that just a second ago. The idea of a community of practice or a working group or whatever that needs to be called, I think is a great idea. I'm willing to start facilitating getting that group together as part of this. I'm not the person to own that over time, but be prepared to be bugged by me to start doing that. I think that's one thing that will help propel this into success that turns into ERDIC leadership in this area in the DoD and specifically funding for you guys to do work that you're interested in this area. Also, just housekeeping stuff. What we talked about today, if the facilitators could get with your note takers and get me, it doesn't need to be formatted in a specific way or fancy or anything like that. I just need a draft of some material by the end of December that I can work into something that looks like a first draft of a report that comes out of this. And if anybody wants to be involved in that, please volunteer. If you don't volunteer, you may get voluntold. I'm just, I'm going to bug some people because what I've told the folks in my branch, I promise you don't want a soil scientist writing your SynBio report. I promise. It's just, it won't work out well. And I don't mean that as a threat. I mean, it's not going to be pretty. It will not be good. So, yep.
Just to comment on that, if you provide, say, an outline or a template, I think
Right.
that would help.
Okay, good. So I can do that. So if the group leads will give me some raw material, I'll put that into the template that we'll be working from, and I can send that back out. I'll send that back out to the group as a whole. If you want to participate in providing feedback, we'll go back and forth, and we'll try to do that in a way that's most productive for everybody.